Most people think the AI threat is still coming. The data says it already landed, and right now only 4% of workers are on the right side of a 56% salary gap. Here's how to make sure you're one of them.
40% of jobs gone. That's the number being thrown around, and it's not wrong, but it's also not the real story. The real story is what's happening to the workers who survive that cut, and more specifically, what separates them from the ones who don't. Because it's not what you think. Over 37% of companies now say they plan to replace jobs with AI by the end of this year. IBM is on record projecting 1.4 billion workers need to reskill by 2028. Stanford economists published data last August showing employment in AI-exposed roles for workers ages 22 to 25 dropped 13%. That already happened. Past tense. And yet the conversation everyone keeps having is still framed as a future threat, as if we're waiting for the wave when it already hit the beach. Here's what I'll show you by the end of this video, a specific, working framework for figuring out exactly which skills to acquire, in what order, based on your actual job category. So you're not just vaguely learning AI, but making moves that show up in your next salary negotiation. That's the payoff. Stay with me. So how did we get here? Back in late 2022, OpenAI dropped GPT-4's predecessor, and roughly 40 million office workers collectively had a mild panic attack. By 2023, Microsoft had invested $13 billion into OpenAI and embedded Copilot directly into the Office 365 suite that something like 345 million people use every single workday. Google followed with Gemini baked into Workspace. Suddenly, this wasn't a tech nerd curiosity, it was sitting in the toolbar next to your spell check. What happened next split the workforce in two. Some people clicked on those tools, got curious, started building habits around them. Others dismissed it, called it a fad, said their job was too nuanced, too human, too relationship-driven for any of that to matter. And the data from the last 18 months is now clear about which group is winning. Here's how I'm breaking this down. First, the foundation, the actual productivity numbers that explain why AI-skilled workers are pulling away from their peers financially. Then the complication, the part of this story that the LinkedIn thought leaders are quietly skipping. Then I'll get into the specific strategy, role by role, for how you actually close the gap. And finally, the advanced layer, one optimization that most people completely miss even after they've started using AI tools. Start with the foundation. The productivity research is not subtle. A study tracking customer service agents found they handled nearly 14% more calls per hour when using AI assistants. Programmers using GitHub Copilot, Microsoft's AI coding tool, shipped 126% more projects per week. Business professionals wrote 59% more documents in the same time frame. And across roles, a widely cited MIT study found workers using AI saw daily task output jump 66%, which researchers calculated as equivalent to 47 years of natural productivity growth compressed into a single tool adoption. 47 years. Now translate that into salary. The current premium for AI-skilled workers sits at 56% above their non-AI peers in comparable roles. That's not a Silicon Valley anomaly, that gap is showing up in marketing departments, legal teams, finance functions, HR. Anthropic's Claude is being used by Salesforce reps to draft personalized outreach at a scale that would have required 3 people 18 months ago. 1 person. 3 people's output. You can see why the budget math works out the way it does. And the Stanford data I mentioned is worth sitting with for a second. Workers over 30 in AI-exposed jobs saw employment grow 6 to 12% over the same period, where younger workers in those same roles dropped 13%. The difference wasn't age. It was that the older workers had domain expertise, years of knowing the actual job, and when they paired that with AI tools, they became a multiplier instead of a cost. The younger workers who hadn't built that expertise yet, and also hadn't picked up the AI skills, got caught in the worst possible position, replaceable on both dimensions. Actually, scratch that framing, it's not even about being replaceable. It's about what happens in a budget meeting when someone has to justify headcount. If you're producing the same output as someone using AI tools and that person costs the same salary, you are not being fired for cause. You're being subtracted from a spreadsheet by someone who never had a conversation with you about it. Which brings me to the complication, and this is the part that I called BS on when I first read it in the workforce reports. Everyone keeps publishing the scary aggregate numbers: 40% of jobs, 1.4 billion workers, 13% employment drop, but they bury the most important data point in the footnotes. IBM projected 1.4 billion workers need AI reskilling by 2028. You know how many completed any formal AI training in 2025? 58 million. That is 4% of the people who need to adapt. 4% have started. What that means is the competitive moat is still wide open. If you're watching this and you feel behind, you're probably not as behind as you feel, because the overwhelming majority of workers in your field haven't moved either. The gap between AI-skilled and non-AI skilled workers is 56% in salary. 4% of people are on the right side of that gap. This is not a closed race. But here's where it gets complicated in a way that the productivity cheerleaders won't tell you. The tools themselves are creating a new layer of inequality inside the group of people who are using AI. There's a difference between someone who uses ChatGPT to write a first draft of an email and someone who has built a workflow in N8N that automatically pulls CRM data, drafts personalized outreach at scale, flags replies by sentiment, and routes hot leads to a calendar link, all before they've had their first coffee. Both people are using AI. They are not in the same category. Amazon's internal productivity data, leaked in a Wall Street Journal piece from early 2025, showed that the highest performing employees using AI weren't just using it more. They were using it differently. They were treating AI as infrastructure, not as a shortcut. The shortcut users got marginal gains. The infrastructure builders got the 56%. That distinction is exactly what Part 2 is going to get specific about, the actual workflow architecture that separates the shortcut users from the infrastructure builders, broken down by job function, with the exact tools and the exact order to build them in. So you know the gap exists. You know 4% of workers are actually closing it. Now let's talk about how you become one of them, specifically, not generally. The first move is figuring out your job's AI surface area. Not every task in your role has the same automation leverage, and trying to AIify everything at once is how people burn 2 weeks and abandon the whole thing. Take a piece of paper, literal paper, the kind you've touched, and write down every repeating task you do more than twice a week. Emails, reports, research, scheduling, data pulls, analysis summaries, first drafts. Now sort them by time cost. The top 3 time-consuming repeating tasks are your AI surface area. That's where you start. For knowledge workers, analysts, marketers, writers, consultants, the highest leverage starting point in 2025 is prompt engineering paired with a long context model. Anthropic's Claude 3. 5 Sonnet handles 200,000 token context windows, which means you can feed it an entire project brief, a company's earnings report, 3 competitor analyses, and your previous work samples, then ask it to produce a deliverable that reflects all of that simultaneously. That is not a first draft tool. That's a thinking partner with perfect recall of everything you've given it. The average knowledge worker who figures this out reclaims somewhere between 8 and 12 hours per week. 8 to 12 hours is a part-time job. For sales roles specifically, the infrastructure play is connecting a model to your CRM via Zapier or Make. Both have pre-built OpenAI connectors that take under 2 hours to set up with zero coding. Once that's live, every new lead gets an automatically generated research brief before your first call: company size, recent news, likely pain points, suggested talking points. Salesforce ran internal numbers on reps using this kind of setup and found a 31% increase in close rate. Not pipeline volume. Close rate. That is the metric that determines compensation. For anyone in a management or operations role, the move is building an AI-assisted reporting layer. Microsoft Copilot in Excel, available to anyone on a Microsoft 365 business plan, which runs about $22 per user per month, can take raw data and generate the narrative summary your leadership team actually reads. The people who figure this out stop spending Sunday nights building slide decks and start showing up to Monday meetings with analysis their peers spent the weekend manually producing. Now the advanced layer. This is what separates the people getting 56% salary premiums from the people getting 8% raises and feeling good about it. The highest performers aren't using AI to do their current job faster. They're using AI to do a job one level above their current title and then showing that output to their manager. I've seen this work. A marketing coordinator at a mid-sized SaaS company used Claude to produce a full competitive positioning analysis, the kind of work that normally comes from a senior strategist, and sent it to her VP unsolicited. She got a promotion 4 months later. The output was the audition. Google's internal research from 2024, cited in their DeepMind productivity papers, found that employees who used AI to produce above-title level deliverables were 3.2 times more likely to be flagged for fast-track promotion than employees who used AI purely for efficiency in their existing scope. Efficiency saves your job. Ambition with AI gets you the next one. The specific tactic: once a month, pick one deliverable that your manager's manager cares about. Use your AI workflow to produce a version of it at a quality level that should realistically take someone 2 years more experienced than you. Share it. Do that 4 times in a row and your title conversation changes. Now close the loop from the top of part 1. The open question was, which skills, in which order, based on your actual job category? The answer is this: identify your top 3 repeating time cost tasks. Automate the highest volume one first using a long context model or a no-code connector. Then redirect that recovered time into one above-title deliverable per month. That sequence, automate one thing, redirect the time into one ambitious output, is the compounding loop that produces the 56% salary gap over 18 to 24 months. If this landed, drop your job category in the comments and I'll tell you the single highest leverage AI tool for your specific role. That's a real offer, not a placeholder. I read the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, the reason to do it now is that next week's video covers the specific prompt architecture that makes Claude and GPT-4o produce senior-level output instead of generic summaries. The exact structural difference between a prompt that saves you 20 minutes and one that saves you 20 hours a week. Because knowing the strategy is step 1. The prompts are where it actually gets built. That video is queued up right now. Watch it next.
Automate one repeating task. Redirect that time into one above title deliverable. Do that 4 months in a row. That is the loop that builds the gap, and next week I'll show you the exact prompts that make it work. Subscribe and I'll see you there.